Welcome back, Fenn family, to another episode of the House Husband Diaries. As always, I am your host, Carter C. And today we are carrying on. We're back actually to themes, as one poster, I believe it was BS, pointed out. Some of these aren't necessarily themes. Some of them are words, the key words. When the quote came out from Forrest, I think K-Pro and Cal in their documentary that there was he verified there was a word that was key in the poem. So I already had a number of themes coming out, and that was kind of what I was doing. So I just sort of snuck in keywords and not you're very astute. That was probably my bad and laziness. I should have maybe separated the two and done themes and then words, keywords, potential keywords. But is what it is. Not going to change it just yet. Maybe I will later. Go back and retitle some of those and put them in a different playlist. Let me know if you'd like me to do that. So if it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother you, right? So this video is on time and midnight. So the theme was midnight because I noticed he said it a number of times, and then when I searched for it, it was only 4 or 5 mentions of midnight, and that didn't really seem like that much of a theme. It's just sort of a subtle, so just a couple mentions. And then I said, okay, time might be big picture kind of thing. And so I searched for time, and time came up 122 times. Now, sometimes time is spelled within sometimes, so that was, so I didn't use all the 122 mentions of time. Didn't even probably do a third of them, but it's going to be a long video, fairly long. I'll try to get through it pretty quickly. So without further ado, time and midnight. Page 7. Talking Eric Sloan. It's actually the first part or last part of page 6, first part of page 7. He said that his habit of never dating his letters or paintings was not a careless oversight, but rather a deep personal superstition that ignoring time itself might be a secret technique to delay aging. Now, we talked about this. A lot of people, hey, time, secret technique. I mean, there's a lot of words here and a lot of fishy things. And it's right at the beginning of the book, so your brain is just, wired. You're wired in. You're ready to go. You're looking for stuff. And it's very interesting. We've talked about how he fudges the number for age, how he wishes he could be clever like Eric Sloan. It's very interesting because ignoring time itself being a secret technique, if you ignore time, does that mean you're not following? That's what you shouldn't do? Because we all know it doesn't delay aging. But is there a subtle hint saying, well, if you ignore time, it's a secret technique, but don't ignore time? Is it? I don't know. It's interesting. Skip down a couple paragraphs. But being almost 80 gives me a lot of time to think about regrets and other things. Now, I haven't looked this up, but it just popped in my mind as I started to film this. I don't know how much this microphone is going to catch all of this. It's a little bit different of a setup here with these headphones in. So I think what's really interesting is he says a lot of time to think about regrets and other things. But then at the very end on page 147, he says, I feel my life has been a rough draft of the place just ahead where the past will come alive again, and all of my experiences and friends through the years will meet with me at the great banquet. No, that's not where he says. Oh no, it's right, the paragraph right before that. My mind is not playing tricks on me. In writing this memoir, I've rediscovered things about myself I thought were long forgotten. It would be nice to start life over and do it all again. I'd change so much, but only for the sake of new adventures And that's why I think you should always be and that's why I think youth should always be wasted on the young. So it doesn't sound like he necessarily has any regrets. He wouldn't change anything in his life. At the very end, he would just change it all for the reasons of going on new adventures and having new adventures, not because there's any major regrets. But he has a lot of time to think about regrets and other things. So if he doesn't have regrets, what are these other things that he's thinking about? Page 9. I think I'm going to have to come up with something new if I keep using this mic. I think that makes too much noise, but you let me know. So right at the top, but with all of my days now, in the fullness of time, it seems prudent to do a little investigating about higher things. Same sentence. You know how I say that in so many of these theme videos or keyword videos? These themes, these keywords seem to be in the same sentences, in contiguous sentences. It's very interesting. So with all of his days now, in the fullness of time, what does that mean? In the fullness of time. In the fullness of time that because you're almost 80, you feel like you've lived a full life. In the fullness of time, because of that many number of days, it seems prudent to do a little investigating about higher things. Is that the water high? What are you spending time thinking about? Not regrets. It's the other things. Higher things. Paddle up your creek. All right. I'm going to keep going through. We're going to go through 2 mentions of time on page 11. First sentence. Well, it starts on 10, right? The only registered guy in the place was showing more patience than I felt at that moment, while 2 borderline biddies were preoccupied with some kind of breathtaking nonsense at the expense of my time and patience. Somebody's spending his time, and that does not make him happy. He'd like to spend his time the way he wants to, thinking, in cemeteries, on grave markers, at midnight. All kinds of interesting times to think. And then we skip down a little bit. It doesn't matter that teenagers have to stand in line for hours because they have so much time left. So obviously he's thinking, he's near the end of his life, cancer, maybe it'll come back, who knows. Let's, the young, they've got time. Me, I'm going to ponder, I'm going to think. Next page, page 12. Going through borders. It's the second paragraph, second sentence. I didn't spend much time in the children's section or cooking or travel. Why would you say that? I wouldn't spend much time in the children's section or cooking or travel. Something I've never thought of also while I'm filming this is, are there certain sections I should be thinking about if I went into a bookstore that aren't the children's section or cooking or travel? Or is that just filler? I don't know. Maybe it's part of Catcher in the Rye. Page 13. Admittedly, the places in JD's book were different from mine, and the names were different, and the time was different from mine, and the schools I never heard about were obviously different. But other than that, it was my very own storyline. I thought that was interesting because I had to go back and look at when was J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye, when was that book set? And they said the 40s and 50s. And I guess Forrest's time was the 30s and 40s. So, I guess it's a different time, 10 years, 7 years. It doesn't seem like a tremendous difference in time. But he says it was a different time. I'm not going to dwell on it. If you would like to, by all means. Page 14. I just needed some time to think. Lost my place. Where is it? Down at the bottom, most of the way down. I just needed some time to think, and the more I thought about JD, the more I liked him. I just needed some time to think. All right, so we need some time to think. We need to ponder the poem, read the book, go back to the poem. Page 15. Midnight. So now I sit here past midnight beside my juniper fire, reflecting back to the year when my awareness took its first few steps. Big fan. Page 26. Down at the bottom. It was easy to justify the time I spent in Spanish class looking out of the big window that was adjacent to my desk. So now he's justifying the time that he spent looking out the window, out of the big window. Look at the big picture. Spanish class, Spanish. He's justifying. It's easy to justify time spent in Spanish class looking out of the big window that was adjacent to my desk. I'm telling you, we're getting there, right? We're getting there. We're going to find this chest. All right. Let's see here. Page 41. Last sentence of Surviving Myself. We talked about it. A kid really has time to think in a graveyard. He's thinking. He's thinking in a graveyard. What do you think about when you're in a graveyard? About life? Is that a big picture? Are you thinking about life? Thinking about Spanish? Thinking about learning foreign languages? No. I'm not. Page 63. Let's see here. Page 63. I won't dwell further on that because I'm grateful that the space between fact and fiction is often blurred by the passage of time. Except to say that we finally loosened our grip on the reins and the horses took us to a dirt road. Am I the only one that read that? Every time I read that sentence, the first half of that sentence makes no sense and there's nothing to tie it to the second half of that sentence, right? I won't dwell further on that because I'm grateful that the space between fact and fiction is often blurred by the passage of time. Except to say that we finally loosened our grip on the reins and the horses took us to a dirt road. So what the space between fact and fiction is often blurred by the passage of time. You know, I've thought that this chapter has something to do with take it in the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk. And as I'm going through and recording this video, this is the third time that I have seen something and mentioned something that it just pops in my head. And I haven't thought about this all the way through. So you're getting this as I'm trying to process this. The space between fact and fiction is blurred by the passage of time. Tears dry up. No one cries anymore after the memories have faded by the passage of time. We finally loosened our grip on the reins, and the horses took us to a dirt road. Yeah, I don't really know where you go with the dirt road thing because there's a million dirt roads out there. But I will be thinking about that when I get done with this, recording this one. Okay, we're about halfway done with this video, so buckle up. All right, 69, stout-hearted men. But I knew it was time to get serious about something because my potential was about to burst inside of me. He knew it was time to get serious. What are we getting serious about? About being a Texas A&M Aggie? Are we getting serious about finding the treasure? Are we getting serious about hiding the treasure? Are we getting serious about a place, a clue, a hint? It was time to get serious. It's time, all right. Page 71. It was a threshold moment in my life, but I didn't know it at the time. That sticks out like a sore thumb, like Yellowstone, right? But I didn't know it at the time. It was a threshold moment. That's not very subtle, but it does sound fishy. Page 73. A big, ugly sergeant gave me purpose for the first time in my life, and it wasn't very funny. Funny. Laughter. A big, ugly sergeant gave me purpose for the first time in my life. For the first time. First time? First clue? Why wasn't it funny? Page 78. Moving this puppy on along. Page 78. So it is with me now as I sit here past midnight, alone with only myself to know. It's interesting, right? Hold on 1 second. Where were we? Sorry, had to dog break once again. All right. So it is with me now as I sit here past midnight, alone with only myself to know. This is page 78. So we're going back to midnight. I know it's a little discombobulated. But he's alone. He's trying to get to know himself. Or at least go back in his memory, spend time with himself late at night. Page 82. I was so ashamed, halfway down. I was so ashamed I started crying in my oxygen mask. Tears, sobbing. I could hardly see through the dark visor on my helmet, and the salty tears burned my eyes in a way I had not known for a long time. I'm dying to know what the real solve is. It would be great if I found it, honestly. Like, that would be really cool. I think it'd be just a cool story. But I know the chances of me finding it from North Carolina are very slim. So I'm dying to know who finds it and what the solve is. I don't care where it is. If it's in New Mexico, if it's in Yellowstone, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, I don't care. I just think it's fascinating. Page 88. Up at the top, because the Air Force didn't issue pepper as survival equipment, a lot of the pilots made midnight requisitions at the mess hall. One paragraph later, at about midnight, there was a bright flash of light that I estimated to be just a short distance away. Now that I'm reading that, I'm like, oh, flash of light? Is that something? Just a short distance away? Is that a subtle hint? Subtle clue? 3 pages later, page 91. I found this really interesting. After that mission, it was time to pay my debt to the waterfall and the magic clearing to which I felt so obligated. Now, one of the things that doing these theme videos and these keyword videos has done for me, and I hope it's doing the same for you as you listen and as you watch these videos, is it's taking the book out of context. So you're taking patterns for Mr. BS or Miss BS, I don't know who you are. You're taking patterns, you're taking themes, you're taking keywords, and you're taking them out of the stories that they sit in, because maybe the stories are 85% true. Maybe the stories are 100% made up, but they're just there to try to tell us something else, you know? I mean, who knows? I have no idea. However, when you take these themes and these keywords and these patterns and you start to just look at them alone, it's interesting how things pop out at you. Ideas pop up and you go, wait a minute. Maybe that's what Forrest meant when he said the person that finds the treasure chest will have reread and reread the poem in the book over and over and thought about it. So halfway down, he says, after that mission, it was time to pay my debt to the waterfall. He didn't have a debt to the waterfall. And the magic clearing to which I felt so obligated. He made a deal that if he came back, he would go there, but it wasn't necessarily a debt. I don't think of that as a debt. I think of that as like, it's time to hold up my end of the bargain and just say, you know, and he's not even, it wasn't even like the place allowed him to come back, you know? Anywho, I just found it interesting. All right, page 94, then 95, then 96. Bada bing, bada bang, badang. 94. Bottom of the page. How innocent and foolish all of that seemed at the time, and even more so that a strangely insidious something began to gnaw on me. Foolish at the time. Seems foolish when you're out there and you think you're going across a field to a tree, sitting there, and you think, this is silly. Nobody else is walking over here. Nobody's been within 200 feet of the treasure. I'm off a path. I'm just out in this field. You're going to feel silly, foolish. Kids wouldn't feel that way, right? Kids would just be, oh, this is really interesting. I'm going to go out here because I'm interested in that. I don't care what people are thinking, if they're looking at me or not. If there's anybody around, who knows? All right. Page 95. After a violent ending, they have been swallowed up, talking about the French soldiers, they have been swallowed up in a serenely beautiful place, and at the same time, hidden by the ravages of time and nature. Hidden. Secreted. Hidden. Covered up by the ravages of time and nature. That box, that treasure chest, has been out in the wild for 10 years, right? It's not 50 years like those French soldiers, but it's been out there, hidden by the ravages of time and nature. It may be covered up in some way just because of time and nature. Next page, 96. Bottom of the page. At about midnight, I lifted off for a long, dark flight. Is that even allowed for somebody to just take a jet fighter at midnight after a party, to just hop in a jet fighter and like go some massively long distance. It's at that very extreme end of fuel consumption or fuel capacity. It's starting to stick out and make me go, Things that make you go, All right, we're almost done. Have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-ish pages left. Page 101. There are a few mentions of time here. Shakespeare. They have their entrances and their exits, and one man in his time plays many parts. Flip over. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints in the sands of time. Halfway down, page 102. Both of them, and a multitude of others, have conveyed the same meaning in vastly different ways and at vastly different times and places. But they all really said the same thing. Look at me. I'm somebody. Please don't forget. Is that not what Forrest is saying with this thrill of the chase? For all his humility or everything, his wonderful patience to spend with treasure hunters and searchers and be a part of the community. He didn't have to be this involved, 10 years after he hid the treasure, but he has been. And I want to say bravo, and I think that's great. But isn't a big part of hiding a treasure chest worth, who has millions of dollars, period, and then who has millions of dollars that they're just willing to hide, in effect, give away, but people will earn it. Sure, it's gotten 10 years of fun out of it, and he's helped some people and selling books and everything, so I'm not down on that at all. But isn't that what he's saying? Isn't that what we're all saying? That's what he's saying. He's saying, I'm saying this, but so is everybody else. Look at me, I'm somebody. Please don't forget. But isn't that what we do? So of course we forgot. Next line. Of course we forgot. Because of time. Will somebody tell me if there's a famous clock? Not a medicine wheel, not a sundial. Is there a famous clock somewhere out west in one of the search states? Is there a famous, like a Big Ben, or I don't know. Is there a clock on a train station, like an old train station or something? I don't know I don't know what that would be, but it just keeps coming up. Okay. Let's end this puppy. We got a handful more. Page 117. Last sentence of Tea with Olga. Time had taken them apart, but it eventually brought them back together. What else does time do? Time had taken them apart, but it eventually brought them back together. Is that the subtle hint to the entire poem? That we start somewhere and time takes us apart, but it eventually brings us back together with the treasure chest? Is it circular? Time. Don't discount time. Page 121. I already said this in another video a long time ago, but as I got older, I realized there were many moments to remember, like the time I sat under a tree on the Madison River, for those Yellowstone people of you, and watched the osprey dive. For fish, as I wrote a note for my wife, who always allowed me the luxury of doing the things I thought were important. Next sentence, paragraph. There comes a time, maybe it's an age, when all of us reflect on the happenings that marked our passage through the breaks and thickets of life. Page 125. Last paragraph, mention this too. And when my tackle box is closed at last and the caddis hatch is gone, I will rest through all of time and space, pillowed down and scented in, with a smile that comes from remembering the special things that brought me to that final place, one of which was knowing Peggy was there somewhere waiting for me. Page 128. All right, we're gonna. Oh wait, page 124. There were a lot more mentions of time. Sorry. Go back. Most are conjured up by reverential spirits and are reserved for times when we happen upon the solitude of just ourselves. Oh. Most are conjured up by reverential spirits, higher things, and are reserved for times when we happen upon the solitude of just ourselves. He's talking about reflecting on the happenings that marked our passage through the breaks and the thickets of life, and thickets of life. Most are conjured up by reverential spirits and are reserved for times when we happen upon the solitude of just ourselves. A passing mood will bring thoughts of loved ones floating back to dominate a few moments of our time. The reveries are too many to be counted, but each one occupies a far corner of my mind, waiting for another time. Time. Page 128. Lying in bed at 3:00 in the morning, unable to sleep, gave me time to ponder and rifle through my brain, looking for answers that I didn't think were there. Before, page 129, then we'll wrap this up with one last one. Before, I had been happy with where my life was, but now what I seemed to lack in time remaining was conspicuously exceeded by my sudden desire for more of it. Lack of time, sudden desire, or a desire for more of time. I gotta spend some alone time thinking about time, you know what I mean? After this video. All right, page 147, and then we're out of here. I love this. No time spent in thought is wasted, and nothing is too small to know. So one should not let knowing a little bit be a substitute for learning more. No time spent in thought is wasted. Thanks, Forrest. I spend too much time thinking, as some would say. So I appreciate you saying no time spent in thought is wasted. And then down below, the past will always be contradictory when told by one person at a time. One person at a time. YouTubers, Forrest Fenn. I'm just telling you what I see, one video at a time. So that's my video on time. Midnight was thrown in there just because I think midnight's interesting. It's one of the times I thought about maybe going through all the different times, or 3:00 in the morning, 2:00, whatever, 11:00, but that seems a little superfluous at this point. So I'm not going to do that unless there's a crying out for it. But let me know what you think about time. about the big picture. I think this is fascinating. I'm looking forward to hearing more. Doing some live shows, getting some chat, getting some feedback. I really want to know what new ideas are out there. What are people thinking? Are we still beating the bushes? I mean, obviously some people have gotten, the first two clues. They've been to where warm water's halt. Who knows what the second clue is? Is it just take it in the canyon down, or is it take it in the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk, or is not far? Does it stop at not far? Do you have to include, but too far to walk? Why has nobody gotten past clue 2? And if people were within 200 feet, does that mean that clues 1 and 2 get you to within 200 feet? Is time the big picture? What's the big picture? What's that one thing that we haven't thought about? Forrest hasn't seen on any of the blogs or any of the YouTubers or anything. What's that one theme or that thing that people aren't thinking about that gets you from solving clue 2 to solving clue 3 and on? Let me know what you think. Share. I had to get over the fear of sharing, like thinking that I somehow knew something that everybody else didn't. I think it's really interesting when people go, I know, so I don't want to share too much because here's my solve. And it's like, dude, there have been a million solves and none of them are right. So let's be honest, right? So that's why I'm here sharing, because most likely it's not correct. If it is, and somebody goes, hey, that was it, you figured out something I didn't figure out, that it was correct. I'm trying to put out solid information, solid logical thinking, aberrations, themes, patterns, what have you, keywords, and we'll just see where it goes. So thanks so much for watching this episode of the House Husband Diaries. Let me know how the microphone is. I'm sorry I had to cut out again, but that's life, and I'm not much onto the editing, but maybe we'll move into editing in March and April and spend more time on the back end of videos and make it look fancy or something. But I don't know, maybe that'll be 6 months in or something. I'm still working on being consistent every day for a few months at a time. So thanks so much for watching this episode of the House Husband Diaries. Hope you all have a great day, and until tomorrow, talk to you then.